I'm Mark Anderson, 34, the owner of Anderson Construction. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but sometimes life takes unexpected turns that change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September when my world was turned upside down. I had spent most of my day reviewing project proposals and financial reports in my office. The quarterly audit was approaching, and something about our recent transactions had caught my attention. I decided to double-check the numbers myself, a habit I developed after taking over the family business 7 years ago. The office was quieter than usual. Most of our 20 employees had either left for various construction sites or gone home for the day. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windows of our modest 2-story office building in the suburbs of Boston. I was tired but content, having just secured a $2.5 million contract for a new apartment complex downtown. Jessica, our accounting manager, was still at her desk when I walked by. She had been with the company for 3 years, managing our finances with what I thought was exceptional efficiency. I trusted her completely. Maybe that was my first mistake. I noticed her office door was slightly ajar, and I could hear her voice drifting into the hallway. She was talking to someone, laughing in a way I hadn't heard before. At first I thought nothing of it. Employees having casual conversations after hours wasn't unusual. But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. "Yeah, he has no idea," she was saying, her voice clear and sharp in the quiet office. "I mean, he's always buried in those construction plans and meetings with clients. It's not like he notices when I adjust the numbers. Plus, I've got him completely convinced that I'm just being thorough with all these extra audits." I froze in the hallway, the manila folder with our latest project estimates tightly gripped in my hand. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it from the other room. Through the small gap in the door, I saw Tom Parker, our site supervisor, casually sitting on the edge of her desk. He was supposed to be overseeing our $800,000 renovation project in Cambridge, which had started last month. Instead, here he was, sharing what appeared to be an expensive bottle of wine with my accounting manager after hours. "He's so clueless," Jessica continued, swirling the wine in her glass. "It's almost sad how easy it's been. The best part. He still thinks I'm stressed about the upcoming audit, and that's why I've been working late." I heard Tom laugh, the sound of his wine glass clinking against hers. "Well, as long as we keep skimming off these projects without anyone noticing, who cares, right? It's not like we're ever going to get caught." That was the moment everything shattered. I felt my world tilt on its axis, the weight of their betrayal pressing against my chest like a physical force. The project files in my hands, containing details of our latest $2.5 million development, suddenly felt like evidence of something far more sinister than just business plans. I thought about bursting in, demanding explanations, and firing them both on the spot. My company, the one my father had built from the ground up 30 years ago, the one I had grown from a small local operation to a respected name in Boston construction, was now being undermined. They were still laughing about it like it was some kind of game. But something stopped me. Maybe it was 2 decades of business experience, or maybe it was the memory of my father's voice in my head. "Son, the smartest moves are often the quietest ones." Instead of confronting them, I silently backed away from the door, my mind already calculating my next steps. I walked to my office with careful steps, my calm exterior hiding the turmoil inside. I gathered my laptop, a few key files, and my briefcase. Everything else could wait. I needed time to think, to plan, and to understand the full scope of what I had just discovered. "Heading out, Mr. Anderson," Jessica called as I passed her office again. She had obviously heard me moving around. Her voice was perfectly normal, professional, the same voice that had been laughing at my expense just minutes earlier. "Yes, got some plans to review at home," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Have a good evening, Jessica." "You too, Tom," I added, acknowledging his presence without revealing that I had overheard everything. "Thanks, boss," Tom responded, his voice carrying the same arrogant tone I had heard through the door. "Don't work too hard." I got into my Tesla Model S, a reward I had bought myself after landing our first $1 million contract, and drove away from the office building that had been my second home for the past 7 years. But instead of heading home, I found myself driving to the one person I knew I could trust. Sam Mile, my best friend since college, and more importantly, one of Boston's top corporate lawyers. Sam's corner office in downtown Boston was still lit when I arrived. As a senior partner at Mitchell & Associates, late nights were as familiar to him as they were to me. The city lights sparkled through his floor-to-ceiling windows, creating an almost surreal backdrop for the conversation we were about to have. "Jesus Christ, Mark," Sam said after I finished explaining everything. He leaned back in his leather chair, running a hand through his graying hair. "How much do you think they've taken?" "I don't know yet," I replied, pacing the room. "But with the volume of contracts we've handled this year, we're talking about millions in skimmed funds. I'll need to go through everything with a fine-toothed comb." "Don't," Sam said sharply, sitting up. "We need to do this by the book. If they've been manipulating the books as long as you suspect, we need forensic accountants. And more importantly, we need to do this quietly." I stopped pacing and sank into one of his visitor chairs. "Amy, Tom's wife. She works in our HR department. She has no idea." "One thing at a time," Sam advised, already pulling out his phone. "First we document everything. Then we build our case. I know you want to fire them immediately, but that could compromise our position. We need to be smart about this." I went to work like nothing had changed. I greeted my employees, reviewed project timelines, and even sat through a meeting with Jessica about our quarterly projections. Every smile she gave me, every professional nod from Tom, felt like watching actors in a play where I could finally see the strings. Sam's team worked quietly in the background over the next few weeks. Forensic accountants discreetly combed through our records. Each day, I had to act normal while watching Jessica and Tom continue their scheme, knowing they thought they were getting away with it. The evidence mounted quickly. Discrepancies in material costs, inflated labor expenses, and mysterious consulting fees. It was all there, hidden in plain sight behind a wall of carefully crafted spreadsheets and reports. They had been bleeding my company for at least 2 years, possibly longer. 1 month later, I called an emergency board meeting. Jessica was there, of course. As our accounting manager, she sat confidently at the conference table with her laptop open, probably thinking this was just another routine financial review. "Before we begin," I said, standing at the head of the table, "I'd like to introduce some special guests." Right on cue, Sam walked in with 2 forensic accountants and a detective from the Boston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. The color drained from Jessica's face. Across the table, Tom, who had been invited as our senior site supervisor, suddenly looked like he might be sick. "For the past month," I continued, my voice steady, "we've been conducting a thorough investigation into our company's finances. What we found is disturbing, to say the least." I nodded to one of the accountants, who began distributing detailed reports to the board members. "Mr. Anderson," Jessica started, her voice trembling slightly. "I can explain," Jessica began, but I cut her off. "I heard you explain it quite clearly 4 weeks ago, when you were laughing about how easy it was to steal from me." The look of shock on her face was almost satisfying. Almost. The next few hours were a blur of legal proceedings and police statements. The detective led both Jessica and Tom out in handcuffs, charged with embezzlement and fraud. The total amount they had stolen was close to $1.8 million over 2 years, nearly 15% of our annual revenue. The hardest part wasn't watching them being arrested. It was sitting down with Amy, Tom's wife, in my office afterward. She was devastated, not just by Tom's arrest but by the betrayal. She had no idea her husband was involved in anything illegal. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying, tears streaming down her face. "I should have known with all those expensive gifts he'd been buying." "You couldn't have known," I told her, feeling a strange sense of kinship with her pain. "They fooled all of us." The news spread through Boston's construction industry like wildfire. Anderson Construction's accounting scandal made the local business papers, but not in the way Jessica and Tom might have hoped. Instead of ruining us, the story became one of corporate vigilance and integrity. Our swift action and transparency with the authorities actually strengthened our reputation with clients. I spent the next several months rebuilding our financial systems from the ground up. I hired a new accounting team, implemented stricter controls, and personally reviewed every major transaction from the past 3 years. It was exhausting but necessary. The trust that had been broken wasn't just financial. It was personal. Some nights, sitting alone in my office late into the evening, I would think about how different things would be if I hadn't walked past Jessica's office that Tuesday. How many more years would they have continued stealing from me? How much more damage could they have done? The thought always made me feel cold inside. The legal proceedings wrapped up faster than expected. Both Jessica and Tom pleaded guilty to avoid longer sentences. They were ordered to repay everything they had stolen, though I knew we'd probably never see most of that money again. Sam told me it was a win, but it didn't feel like one. The company survived. More than survived, actually. Our transparency during the crisis brought in new clients who appreciated our commitment to integrity. We even landed a $5 million government contract, our biggest yet. But success didn't erase the lessons I had learned. I'm more cautious now, more thorough in my oversight of the company. Not because I don't trust people, but because I understand better how trust must be balanced with verification. The experience changed me, but I wouldn't say it made me cynical. Instead, it made me wiser. Looking back now, I realize that discovering their betrayal might have been the best thing that could have happened to my company. It forced us to become stronger, more resilient. We implemented systems and controls that should have been there from the start. Our revenue is up 30% from last year, and our team, the honest, hard-working people who stuck with us through the crisis, is stronger than ever. I still think about Jessica and Tom sometimes, wondering what drove them to risk everything for money they didn't earn. But I don't dwell on it anymore. My father used to say that true character isn't built during easy times. It's forged in moments of crisis. He was right. This crisis didn't break us. It revealed who we truly were and what we could become. As for me, I'm still running Anderson Construction, still working long hours, still chasing new projects. But now I do it with my eyes wide open, knowing that success isn't just about making money. It's about maintaining integrity, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching.